All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. All right, if there's anybody else coming, I will let them in as well. And for those of you who are joining us, feel free, if you wish, to share a little bit about yourself in the chat, just who you are, where you're joining us in from today. And also, if you wish, we are also inviting you to take a moment to arrive and perhaps even acknowledging and giving gratitude to those who have been our ancestors or our change makers within our indigenous population in the land that we are all sharing here together. In the chat, we are sharing a link if anybody wishes to explore that a little bit further and wants to share just acknowledgement for us coming together from all over. Welcome. And also in a moment, welcome. Hi, Barbara. I'm going to be also inviting here a poll that our guests have invited us to participate in as well. So let me go ahead and have our poll ready. And I'm going to launch that. It's one question, so also as you are coming in, feel free. And in case it's not on the recording, the question is, I'm here today because I'm interested in, and inviting us to choose the answers that apply to you. And so one of the options is joining an ongoing mindfulness community for education professionals, learning about the science and research related to mindfulness and education, learning about mindfulness because I'm new to it, sharing my experience because I'm experienced in practicing and or teaching mindfulness, and supporting my resilience and well-being through mindfulness practices and through personal practice. So feel free to share your thoughts and ideas. And thank you for sharing in the chat. We have people from all over. We have Minneapolis, we have Illinois, Florida, Delaware, Champaign. Wow. Thank you all. All right, I'm going to take a moment here for our poll. And making sure we have this. End poll, and we're going to share the results with everybody. So this is what we have for who's here present with us here today. So thank you all so much for sharing. And I'm going to head and I'm going to stop sharing. And we have, actually I should say, majority, we have joining an ongoing community of practice and then supporting our own resilience and well-being are the two leading categories for our time for this group here. All right, so thank you all again so much for coming on behalf of the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully. My name is Lindsay Frank and I will be hosting our time, and we have an incredible group who are our guests today for our time for Seeds of the Heart, holding space for educators. So we have Christine, Allie, Katie, and Shelly with us. They each have a star by their name so you can identify who our guests are in holding and creating this space. So we will be sharing so much together, and I'm going to go ahead and invite Katie into the space for each one of you to introduce yourselves and then beginning our time. So let's give them a warm welcome. And Katie, over to you.
Hi, I'm Katie. Glad to be here, and I am a children's mindfulness coach. So I'm excited to be here with y'all today.
So I'll go next. I'm Allie Eisen, and I teach mindfulness and meditation to kids and teachers, as well as the corporate world. And I'm also a sound healer, and I'm super excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Murphy, and I am a former elementary teacher. It's when I first brought mindfulness to others when I was an elementary teacher. I'm a trauma-sensitive certified mindfulness teacher and educator, and I'm currently a researcher and faculty member at the University of Toronto, where I teach courses in the theory and practice of mindfulness and education. And I'm also very excited to be here with all of you.
And hello, everyone. My name's Christine Anderson, and I live in West Virginia. I have a company called Anderson Meditation, and I teach meditation and mindfulness to individuals and small groups, both in person and on Zoom. And I'm beginning to branch out into schools as well. And I'm just happy to be here today. And as a mindfulness educator, one of the things that I will share is my heart is beating. So I'm very aware of what's going on in my body right now. And I'm just so thrilled that everyone's here. What I'd like to do is just take literally about a minute for us all to settle into this space. And so I invite you to become aware of your posture. Just become aware of where you are seated right now. And if it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes, or if you'd rather, just divert your eyes away from the screen for a moment and just look down. And take 3 long, slow, deep breaths just to settle in. And now come back to your regular breath and notice where it feels strongest for you in your body. Maybe it's your belly, your heart center, or your nostrils. And just place your attention there now. And then tune in with where your feet are. Are they planted on the ground? Maybe they're crossed. And then notice your legs sitting in the chair, on the couch, wherever you might be, your sit bones. And become aware of your posture. And then when you're ready, you can simply open your eyes.
Thank you
Welcome
for that,
back.
Christine.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Again, my name is Shelley, and I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, around 7 to 8 minutes, around some of the research around mindfulness in education. I've got a screen to share with you. Make sure the technology is working. Can you see that okay? Okay, great. I do want to just begin by acknowledging the really difficult time that we are in, the ongoing armed conflict around the world, violence at home and around the world, the ongoing climate crisis, racial injustice, and the changing goalpost of the pandemic. It's a lot. And some folks might ask, why should I focus, or why would it be important to focus on mindfulness when take the time to do that while life is so challenging around the world and perhaps in my own life? And Jack Cornfield, who is a wonderful mindfulness teacher, I'm lucky enough to have him as my mindfulness teacher, has said it's actually specifically during difficult times that it's important that we intentionally steady our hearts to be able to hold all of what's unfolding in our lives and in the world. And one of the gifts of mindfulness is it helps us to, it becomes a training ground for doing just that. So I'm excited, and I know we're all excited to be here with you to talk a little bit about mindfulness for education professionals and in the school setting. I wanted to talk just a bit, just for a minute, about a frame of thinking about mindfulness and education. So many of us are familiar with mindfulness in education, sort of as an intervention to help support and resource teachers, staff, education professionals, administrators, and students towards greater resilience and well-being. And we know mindfulness does that. The research in mindfulness in the school setting is still early on, but we have a good depth and breadth body of research that's accumulating, showing some of the benefits. That's pretty clear. Mindfulness I also we think of mindfulness as education. So if we pull back the lens for a broader view, we bring greater perspective to some of the institutional and societal conditions that actually negatively influence resilience and well-being. So mindfulness isn't offered as a bypass or a way for folks to adjust to some of those conditions, especially if they're inequitable and unjust, but to bring greater awareness to them so that we become resourced to be able to manage them, but also we become more aware of our thinking patterns and our behaviors and how we might be contributing to some of those conditions. So there's mindfulness in education, and then there's mindfulness as education, just sort of as a frame. So we know there's lots of research on teaching profession and stress. Many of you who are in the teaching profession will have an embodied experience of this. I know from my own experience of being a teacher and continuing to be an educator. But what the research shows is that teachers experience the highest rates of daily stress, tied with nurses and equal to physicians. And that won't be a surprise to the educators in the room. We know that 30 to 50% of teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years, and that throughout the pandemic, 97% of teachers in one research study said that they were being called upon physically, mentally, and emotionally, and that in ways that were beyond what they were resourced to do, and that was contributing to negative experiences of their mental health and well-being. And we know this is research that goes back before the pandemic, but we know there's strong research about stress contagion, so that in the classroom, if you have students who are very stressed, we know that there's a ripple effect, and teachers are going to take on that stress. And if teachers aren't receiving the kind of support they need in their roles, that stress is going to have a ripple effect on students. And there was a really cool study done out of the University of British Columbia that measured cortisol levels of students and had teachers do burnout rating scales. And what they found was there's a strong correlation. The classrooms that had students that had the highest levels of stress also had teachers that had the highest levels of burnout. And so we know there's this correlational cyclical. When students are more stressed, teachers are more stressed. And when teachers are more stressed, students are more stressed. So important to think about how can we resource our teachers? How can we resource our students? So again, one of the frames to consider is really that we don't want to suggest that we're placing all of the responsibility on educators to manage their stress, especially when some of the stress is coming from the experience of being asked to take on so much in your role in education, whether you're an administrator or a teacher or a staff member. So we know we need to start by remedying the conditions that give rise to some of that stress and anxiety. And so that's unjust society, institutional policies, practices, and culture. And working within the classroom and school setting, we have a little less control over that. We can, through activism, try to change that, but we don't have a lot of control over that in the day-to-day. We also know that what can help change and improve things is a greater focus on mental health and well-being within the profession, especially over the last 2 years. We're starting to see more of this. There's lots of room to grow, as we know. And then we get to the very top, which is individual personal commitment to focusing on pathways to well-being. And this is where we have the most control. And we know from research, when folks intentionally focus on increasing their well-being and participating in whatever it is. Mindfulness is not a panacea, it's not for everyone, but if people are engaged in well-being, focusing on their well-being, they're more likely to be resourced to handle some of the challenges in life and within the profession. So this brings us to talking about mindfulness. And as I said, the research is in its infancy, but we do have this, what we're finding within the research that's being conducted within the education setting and with teachers and students. It's replicating what we're finding in the general population, which is those who practice mindfulness have greater focused attention, working memory, enhanced relationships with students, greater compassion and self-compassion, improvements in self-regulation, sleep quality, fewer experiences of depression. That feeling of time urgency diminishes. We all, as educators and in the education field, we know that experience. Reductions in levels of stress, emotional exhaustion, burnout, increased resilience and well-being. So some really robust research showing the benefits of mindfulness for teachers. And we know when teachers, educators, administrators have a mindfulness practice, again, there's that ripple effect, and research is really replicating those findings. When I do workshops with teachers, teacher candidates, administrators, I often get asked, give me the most powerful mindfulness strategy that I can practice or introduce into the classroom. What's going to have an effect? A good majority of you, the majority of you said you were here because you wanted to learn about bringing mindfulness into your teaching. When I'm asked about what the most impactful mindfulness strategy is to impact the classroom, I always say it's your practice because of the ripple effect. If you were never to bring mindfulness into the classroom and you practiced yourself, that would have a noticeable and palpable impact on your students because of what we know. So when we have a sense of calm, then our students are going to have a sense of calm because what we know about mirror neurons and just being in our presence. And I often talk about it as we're creating the nervous system of the classroom, or as a good friend and colleague of mine, she calls it the heartbeat of the classroom. So, and administrators, heartbeat of the school or nervous system of the school. So what we do and how we practice has a very big impact, whether we introduce mindfulness to others or not. Just checking my time to see if I have enough time for this. I wanted to share a story with you and to finish up. And this comes from, I teach mindfulness in schools. I also teach within the University of Toronto in the Master of Teaching program. So I work with teacher candidates. And in every course that I teach, I also teach literacy and special education and mental health. Mindfulness is part of the curriculum. So everyone's invited to practice mindfulness in every one of my courses. So I teach about mindfulness and I do talk about how to bring it into the school setting. Two of my teacher candidates, they're teachers now, they went into the classroom, into their practicum, and introduced mindfulness. And they were learning about self-regulation, how to use their minds and mindfulness to calm their nervous system down so they could think more wisely and thoughtfully. So two students came in after recess and they were in the midst of a conflict. And they walked up to the two teacher candidates, and because in this classroom they were learning about conflict management, they were invited to go into the conflict management part of the room to resolve their conflict. And in the corner of the room was something called a Hoverman sphere. And some of you might be familiar with this. It's a sphere that expands and contracts. And the teacher was using it as a model for teaching them how to regulate their breath. So just as Christine invited us to do, to really pay close attention to just taking a few deep, slow breaths. And so the students were learning about this and they were watching the Hoverman sphere, which is a nice visual to help sort of slow down the breath. And they were learning how to calm their nervous system down with their breath so they could think more wisely. So they went into the corner, one of the students, and on the right-hand side is the actual picture from the classroom. It's not the actual students that had the conflict. But one of the students started expanding and contracting this Hoverman sphere. And the teachers walked over and said, they were about to walk over and ask what they were doing because they thought they were just playing. And what unfolded was the student putting the Hoverman sphere down after they took some breaths, and then they talked. And then the teachers walked over and said, we're wondering what you were doing. And one of the students pointed to the word self-regulation on the whiteboard. They didn't know what it meant or probably couldn't read it. But what they were saying was we were doing that. We were using our breath to calm our nervous systems down, to tap into our wiser, more calm thinking. And why I love this story, I remember wanting to do cartwheels, is that this is equally as relevant. It's relevant for our students in the classroom in the Hoberman sphere, or creating one with their hands, and students learn how to do that. What we did with Christine, and I don't know about you, but just that less than a minute of practice, I was able to calm down, feel into my body, and have a sense of just even tapping into a sense of calm. So these practices for high school students, for university, college students, and for adults can have a profound impact on the way we operate in the world and how we're resourced to manage some of the challenges and the work that we're confronted in when we're in the education setting. So that's just sort of a brief overview of some of the research and some of what I think from research, but also from the real stories. And hopefully we're going to hear from some of you about your experiences and your real stories, because this is the heart of what's happening in education and what's possible with mindfulness. I'm just going to bridge uh, uh, some of the research around benefits of mindfulness for teachers, for students, which really does replicate what's happening with adults. I'm quickly going to go past that for time and just ask you to take the next moment, if you will. We have some questions for you. So you're invited to reflect and share. And if you have a pen or on your computer, if you want to make some notes, what inspired you to be here today? You filled out the poll, but we want to ask you to make some notes or reflect on what inspired you to be here today, what interests you about mindfulness, and what do you need to help you further cultivate, or cultivate if you're new to mindfulness, to cultivate mindfulness in your life and or your work. So I'm just going to mute myself, and we'll have just about a minute of silence while you take some time to reflect on these questions, perhaps make some notes, and then Christine is going to invite some sharing. Thanks, everyone.
And also, I will be stopping the recording here momentarily as well for having more of that open space for us to share. And then we will resume the recording afterward, after the main group share as well. So just letting everybody know in advance as well for our share. All right. Well, thank you for our discussion together, and just that really deep connection. And we will continue to hold these spaces. And from this time, our group here will be just reflecting and seeing what some of those next steps may be. So I will actually invite Katie for a moment here to just transition us into our whole group space, and then we'll move into a short group practice with Allie in a moment.
Hi, okay, so I just want to invite everybody to just take a moment, since we just had the share all the information from Shelley, and then the time to discuss the things that we're wondering about and thinking about in this space. And so we'll just take a moment to transition, because we're going to have this wonderful sound healing session from Allie. And so if you have anything still swimming around in your head, anything that you might want to take note of, anyone you want to reach out to, or something you want to remember, you might want to take a second to write that down, or you can just pause and take another couple deep breaths and just create some space in your mind to receive the sound healing from Allie. So we'll just take about 30 seconds to take that space. All right, now whenever you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes if your eyes have been closed, and I will turn the floor over to Allie to begin the sound healing.
Thank you so much, Katie. And I invite you to keep your eyes closed, or you can open them, whatever feels most comfortable. We'll be diving in for a couple minutes into sound healing. And what I love about sound healing, it's using aspects of music and vibration to really improve our mind, body, and emotional states. And you can sometimes move into alpha and theta and delta waves. So I invite you just to relax. The other hand over. Thinking of 3 things that you're grateful for in this moment. Perhaps bringing a smile to your heart and a smile to your face. And taking another mindful breath. Feeling around the space of your body, perhaps wiggling your fingers and your toes. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
Thank you, Allie, so much. That was incredible, and you really have a gift. And for this whole space and everybody who's been here, it really has been an absolute incredible experience today, and really connected through the heart space, which is where we are as educators and leaders and supporters in education. Truly incredible. So I'm going to put in the chat the contact information for our guests today and where you can reach out, as well as for myself and for Kazem. As we close here today, feel free to put in the chat box any gratitudes. And I always love to give snaps for just the time and the work that we do in this space. For those who are a part of COSM and for those who are maybe interested as well, we also have events like this to continue to create and move forward this work in education and in all that we do. So for those who are currently COSM members, continue to check our community platform for additional events, including some of the self-paced studies. I mentioned the micro-credential. We also have our book study that's going on right now that also provides 8 credit hours for your own connection to the Educating Mindfully book. So maybe that's something you're interested in as well. So I will actually invite everybody here. We wish to unmute and just say thank you. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And if you wish to stay on a little bit later, I will be last to leave, and I know our guests will also be here as well. I'm going to stop recording, but thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your summer and day, and thanks for all that you do and all who you are.